Here we're at the web page for Express and JS only. Here we're at the web page for Express, and you can see the definition of Express. It is a fast, unopinionated, minimalist web framework for Node.js, and this is found at expressjs.com. Now you need to have Node.
Vibe Coding 101 Part 3. Stop typing your prompts. Seriously. Your prompt and cursor
Installed already and be able to use npm, and then you can add Express to your project, and as it shows here, it shows npm install Express and then -- save. You no longer need that, and you can actually just type npm I Express. Today we're going to reference some documentation, not from the Getting Started link, but from the guide, and go to the routing page. And this way you'll know how to find the documentation for what we're going over today. Let's go to Visual Studio Code. In the last Node.js tutorial, we built a web server using only Node.js. I'm going to start with the completed code repository from that tutorial, and that's what you see right here in Visual Studio Code. But if you don't have this repository, you should be able to easily follow along without it, or you can download or clone it from the starter source code link that I'm providing in the description below. Okay, I'm looking at the package.json file for the repository. Now, if you just downloaded or cloned the repository, you're still going to need to install the dependencies. Not that we're going to use all of these today, but if you just want to get the repository up to where we are, you could go to the terminal from the terminal menu and choose new terminal, or you can use Control and the backtick. That's what I use in Windows. Mine defaulted to PowerShell, and that's not what I want. Let me switch that over real quick to Git Bash. That's what I expected it to be. And once I have a Git Bash terminal, you would type npm install, and this will go ahead and update all of the dependencies, or install them if you don't have them. So I'll go ahead and do that as well. And you can see it will just check my dependencies here. It shouldn't take long. And when it's finished, I'll know I've got everything installed that would be in this repository. So currently I have nodemon as a dev dependency, UUID and date-fns, which stands for functions, all installed as either a dev dependency or a regular dependency. Now what we want to add is Express. So we'll type npm I Express. We don't need the -- save. That's understood at this point. So we want to install Express as a dependency. And it just takes a few seconds, and Express should be added, and you can see it here in my dependencies listed between date-fns and UUID. Now, just to update a couple of things for this tutorial, I'll switch the name to 06tut instead of 05, and instead of Node.js web server tutorial, I'll just put Express tutorial in the description. But those are minor changes and nothing that you actually have to do. I just wanted to go ahead and update that. Let's move over to the server.js file where we'll make the rest of our changes today. Now, much of what is here, and I can close the terminal as well, much of what is here we don't need anymore. So if you want to make a copy of this file, or if you want to rename the server.js to old server.js or something like that to save this code in your repository, go right ahead, because we're going to get rid of most of it. We need to keep the path requirement, the path import at the top, and then I'm going to remove everything else down to line 12 where we keep the port definition. And then I'm really going to remove everything for now, except where we listen here.
What the fuck? Everything. Okay. Okay.
12 where we keep the port definition. And then I'm really going to remove everything for now, except where we listen here at the very bottom on the specific port. Now we can go ahead and make some changes. Right at the very top on line 1, let's go ahead and import Express. So we'll define Express and we'll set it equal to require Express. After that, let's define app. Now we could use another name here like we've used server, but typically you'll see examples using the word app. So that's what we'll go ahead and define as well. And you set it equal to Express and you call Express. And so now we can use the app where we've been using server. So we'll have app.listen at the specific port that we have provided. Call Express. And so now we can use the app where we've been using server. So we'll have app.listen at the specific port that we have provided. Now we'll use path later. It's the only thing we haven't used up to now.
Where the fuck is the server? Where is the server? Server equals to constant. Okay. I just forgot.
Now. And now let's come down a couple of lines and we can define our first route. So we use app and then we specify the HTTP method that we want to route. So we'll use the get method here. So any get request that comes in that looks for just the root, this would be our index page, then we can specify what to do with that. And this takes an anonymous function here, or a function. It doesn't have to be anonymous, but this is what you would typically see and what I will do. And so now what we do with the route, it happens right here inside this anonymous function. So let's start out very simply, as you might expect, and let's just say response.send, and then we can say, well, let me use a single quote just because I like to better, hello world, and that's what would be sent in response.
Why is everyone talking about Rocket? Well, they just gave away 1 million tokens for free. You literally type build.
And so now we can go ahead and start the server and we will expect to get this at the index page. Now to start our development server, if you remember, as we specified in our package JSON, we can use our dev script that uses nodemon. So nodemon knows to restart anytime we make changes. When we save our file, it will identify those changes and it will restart the server JS. So let's go ahead and open our terminal again. And with the terminal open at the bottom, I'll type npm run dev. And it should take just a second, but the server will start up and we expect to see that server running on port message inside the terminal window. Let me drag this up and see what we get. There we go, server running on port 3500. So now we'll go to Chrome and open up Chrome. Let's open a new tab and let's go to localhost and we've got port 3500. And we get a very small hello world that is simply delivered in text. Okay, let's minimize Chrome and let's drag the terminal down so it doesn't take up quite as much space, but we'll keep the dev server running. But let's go ahead and serve our index file that we have in the views folder now. We do have an index.html here. Instead of just sending hello world, we can send a file. And you do that with res, which is the response, .send file. Now inside of send file, there's a couple of different ways we can specify the file to send in Express. One is to put in the path, say ./views/index.html, and then we can provide options, and one option is to specify the root directory, and this is where we can use that dir name value that is native to Node, and this will tell Node and Express exactly where the root directory name is, and then inside the root directory we would look inside of views, and there we would find the index file. So this should provide the file. Let's go ahead and save, and it says it's restarting due to changes. Once the server restarts, we'll bring Chrome back up, and now that we've got it, let's reload. And now we've got our index page, and I'm going to resize Chrome so we can just see it and the console when we want to, at least when I pull Chrome back up, if I can get it to drop down. Not that we really need the whole thing, we don't have much content here, but we've got that. So now I'll go ahead and minimize and pull it back up again when we need it. So that is one way to do it. Now let me copy this down so we can just leave that in.
Must be absolute. C dot. Fuck. What the fuck?
Commented. And the other way to serve a file is what we're already used to doing in Node, and that's why I usually do it this way, is we can use path.join, and then we specify the directory name, and then we join in the views folder, and then we go ahead and join in the index.html. And this will work in the same way. So let's go ahead and save this. And now let's bring Chrome back and we can reload, and we should just get the same result.
Then slash view slash index dot html. The fuck you do?
And we do, we still have the index page. So that is more how I would do it because I'm used to using path.join, but you could do this either way. Okay, in the file tree we can see we also have new-page.html. So let's just highlight all of this, and I press Shift Alt and the down arrow, and I can just copy all of it down, and then we'll remove the commented outline, and then we'll change our app.get route here. So instead of just looking for the root, we're looking for new-page.html. And upon that request, of course, we want to switch this to new-page.html as well, and save. Now, let's go ahead and look at Chrome and see what we get. if we type in our new dash page .html. So we have slash new dash page.html, and we get the new page. So that works just fine. So we can tell that we're not just intercepting the route right here. Our new dash and look at Chrome and save. Now let's go ahead and look at Chrome and see what we get if we type in our new dash page.html. So we have slash new dash page.html, and we get the new page. So that works just fine. So we can tell that we're not just intercepting the route right here, because this is only looking for the slash. So even though this has a slash, this does make it past, and this is okay. We get new dash page.html instead of stopping right here, because this does read this down like a waterfall. So it would check this route first. But now we know it does make it to this route. However, if you have the same question in your mind that I would, you'd be thinking about, what if somebody requests this slash index.html? Well, this is where Express really helps us out, because Express also accepts some regular expressions in the routing. So instead of just saying slash here, we can specify, and we can say this must begin with the slash, and this must end with the slash, and then we can say or, and some regular expressions in the routing. So instead of just saying slash here, we can specify, and we can say this must begin with the slash, and this must end with the slash, and then we can say or, and then we can also say slash index.html. So if that request comes in, slash, and this must end with the slash, and then we can say or, and then we can also say slash index.html. So if that request comes in, it will route also to the index.html. Let's go ahead and save that. And once again, look at Chrome. And now let's switch back to our slash without the index. And now if we go ahead,
Can't get. What the fuck? New page. Can't get index.html. What the fuck? And then with a slash and then slash. The fuck? The get slash dollar sign and then ends with an or. Wait a minute. I think I lost my consciousness in your dirty index slash no fuck. Okay. Oof and with a slash routing the work clearly first makes you express it active setup. Hell yeah. Express require below that. It must have been listened port architecture console running up in console Barber released in 99. Okay, the code is this. Views. What? The fuck? How does that work? Hmm. Happy to do him for review. And this is Okay. This is a veggie. String automatic. That's a pattern. Start of a URL. Okay. Start off as a URL. Literal slash y y accepted is used to define the regex. What literal y escape a escape. End of the URL path. Oh, it's easier to define the regex. So we, what the fuck is that? URL path. Use any so end of the URL path. Mm. The full regex when you go pattern it is not a really plain math either slash or okay nothing else. Piece by piece breakdown regex pattern means the path must as add with slash. That I understand. That I understand this much. What the fuck? Um. It look weird, but it doesn't. Okay. Okay, you wanna go slash struck into dot. What the fuck, man? Okay. Slash slash start with a starts with a slash slash equals to slash 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 stop or what the fuck, and slash 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 index dot slash HTML. The fuck is wrong with it? The fuck is wrong with this? And to end it off with the dollar sign. Expected a dot. Okay, the fuck. This should be and forward slash dollar HTML. Okay, this is kinda messed up, to be fair.
And put slash index.html.
What the fuck is this not working, nigga? Starts with a slash. Starts with a slash. And index.html. Can't get index.html. Why the fuck can't it get index.html? Okay. Paste. Takes that. Okay.
We still get the index. And if you remember, when we built the node server, we also made it so you could just type in index without the .html. Let's see what happens if we do that. We get cannot get index. So that means it could not find that page. And this is what Express returns by default if it's a 404 and cannot find that. And it's also worth mentioning where we did a considerable amount of code to handle things like the status. See what happens if we do that. And now let's switch back to our slash without the index. And now if we go ahead and put slash index.html, we still get the index. And if you remember, when we built the node server, we also made it so you could just type in index without the .html. Let's see what happens if we do that. We get cannot get index. So that means it could not find that page. And this is what Express returns by default if it's a 404 and cannot find that. And it's also worth mentioning where we did a considerable amount of code to handle things like the status code and the content type in our Node.js only web server. Here, Express automatically sets the correct status code and content type. So for that 404, it already set the 404. Likewise, for this HTML, and we're sending an HTML file, it already sets the correct content type. And of course, it sends a 200 if it finds it as a successful response. And now we can add just a little bit more red.
Regular expression boolean test.
regex, and that way we can make, and now we can add just a little bit more regex, and that way we can make the .html optional on this request. And if we put the .html inside of parentheses and put the question after it, that's exactly what it does. So let's go ahead and do that to our new page as well. And so we'll put the .html and a question mark after it, making the .html optional in the request. So we'll save both of those.
What? Regex using slash river and or what the fuck? Compare. Mm, mm. Index bracket you want to go dot above and question mark. Question mark, what the fuck is the question mark? Question mark is for question mark. Bro, it literally crashed on me, nigga. Dollar slash the HTML. Why the fuck is this not here? Slash start start with HTML. The word index HTML is optional. Whole group is optional. Allows slash. Was from slash index the and common mistake. Don't do this. This makes only one optional, not HTML. So this map is completely optional to do whatever it wants. So this is optional. So the slash and slashing. Okay. HTML
Let's come back to Chrome, take another look, and now index without the .html. Let's go ahead and reload. Oh, and the server's still restarting, as we see down here, restarting due to changes. Let's see if it's going to restart. It's taking just a little bit. May need to restart the server altogether. Do Control-C to get out of that, and then I'll do npm run dev again, and we'll get that server running again. Okay, with the dev server once again running, I'm not sure why it hung up there. Let's go ahead and refresh the page. And now we get our index page with no .html inside of the URL.
Hi there.
Something else we handled in our Node web server that we created was a redirect. So let's do that with this Express server now. And I will copy down the new page request. But now if we're requesting an old dash page with or without the .html at the end, we want to redirect
What the fuck is old dash page then?
that to the new page. Express makes this very simple. So let's go ahead and remove a lot of what you see right here. And we'll put in res.redirect. And now we are sending that to the new page, but we do need to put a slash here. So we have our new page, and we'll go ahead and get rid of that parenthesis we don't need. Now there is one thing missing, and what's missing here is the response code. Now one will be sent by Express, but it's going to send a 302 by default. And a 302 will not necessarily get the search engine to change saying it is a permanent redirect. What we really want is a 301. So we can do that by specifying the status code at the beginning of the redirect and then putting a comma. Necessarily get the search engine to change saying it is a permanent redirect. What we really want is a 301. So we can do that by specifying the status code at the beginning of the redirect and then putting a comma afterward.
The fuck it use? Turn and one move permanently.
And that will go ahead and send the correct status code that we need, because we would want the search engines to go ahead and say, hey, this has been permanently moved to new page. There is no more old page. And we can go ahead and check that in Chrome as well. I'll pull that back up, and inside of here we can just
fuck? Redirectory 01.
But it's a new page, but we did without the .html at the end. We want to redirect that to the new page. Express makes this very simple, so let's go ahead and remove a lot of what you see right here, and we'll put in res.redirect, and now we are sending that to the new page, but we do need to put a slash here. So we have our new page, and we'll go ahead and get rid of that parenthesis we don't need. Now there is one thing missing, and what's missing here is the response code. Now one will be sent by Express, but it's going to send
Okay. I get that.
a 302 by default. And a 302 will not necessarily get the search engine to change saying it is a permanent redirect. What we really want is a 301. So we can do that by specifying the status code at the beginning. beginning of the redirect and then putting a comma afterwards. And that will go ahead and send the correct status code that we need, because we would want the search engines to go ahead and say, hey, this has been permanently moved to new page. There's no more old page. And we can go ahead and check that in Chrome as well. I'll pull that back up. And inside of here, we can just type old-page. We don't even need the HTML. And it redirects to the new page. Now, as I mentioned, Express handles these routes like a waterfall. So at the very end of the route, you can essentially put your default, your catch-all if you want to. And here, once again, we'll use just for a GET request. We'll put in the slash and then an asterisk afterwards, which is the all. And that's kind of like if you're used to writing SQL, a select all. So what we have here with regex is and an asterisk we'll use just for a GET request. We'll put in the slash and then an asterisk afterwards, which is the all. And that's kind of like if you're used to writing SQL, a select all. So what we have here with regex is a slash followed by anything will default to this route. Let's go ahead and put in our function as well. So we have our request and response and the arrow function. And now inside of here, what we can do is essentially send our file. So I'm going to copy this line and bring it down here. And we do have a custom 404 page. And that's what this is for, because Express will send a 404 status code and tell you it cannot find what it's looking for, even if you don't supply anything. But we want to supply a custom 404. And so I'll go ahead and switch new page to 404 here. But what it won't do, because it will find the file to send, is it will not send the 404 status code. It would be a 200, because it could find the file and it would be serving exactly what we told it to. So it wouldn't know to send a 404 at this point. So what we can do is chain in the status code here with a status 404 and just another dot. So that all chains together. So now we have a response with a status code of 404, and we're sending our custom 404 file. Let's save this and go back and just request something that doesn't exist. So up here is it will not send the 404 status code. It would be a 200, because it could find the file and it would be serving exactly what we told it to. So it wouldn't know to send a 404 at this point. So what we can do is chain in the status code here with a status 404 and just another dot. So that all chains together. So now we have a response with a status code of 404, and we're sending our custom 404 file. Let's save this and go back and just request something that doesn't exist. So up here, instead of new page, I'll just put
Oh, info must be the last root in the file. Okay. is this crashing?
Page.
And index no slash parenthesis. Parenthesis. What the fuck is a parenthesis? For all. No, unless you write the parenthesis name. Ambiguous looks like you can't see all parentheses, but no name will be something like parenthesis name. How to fix it? Instead of write parenthesis name. Okay. Wow, anything gives the older get on name. Okay. Anything running on fofo or maybe okay. Can't get use fofo.
And we get our custom 404. What we haven't talked about yet are route handlers. So I'll just put that here in a comma. We have route handlers, and that's exactly what these are. Following our app get route, where we tell it what we are routing, these anonymous function expressions that we have here following the route are route handlers. And we can chain those or use more than one of those. So let me give you an example of that. So we'll have another app get, and let's say the request comes in for hello.html. And let's go ahead and make that optional as well, since we're doing it with the others. So we have the .html is optional, and after the quote we put a comma, and now we have our function expression here, the anonymous function, and its request response, but then we also add in a next, and this is an arrow function. Inside this function, I'm going to console log and just say attempted to load hello.html. And then after our console log, or our call to the console log, we call next. And what that does is it moves on to the next handler or the next expression. And you won't see this often, but you can put a comma and then just put the next function right afterwards. So here we'll have a request and response. We could have a next if we were going to chain another one after this, but if this is the last one in the chain, it won't have a next. It would just be the request and response. And here we can response.send, and we'll just go back to our hello world message that we had at the very beginning. And if we save this, we'll go ahead and be able to see the console at the same time. Let's pull up Chrome. And over here, we'll go ahead and request the hello. And now we get hello world in our small text in the browser. And we also got our console log message attempted to load hello.html. So you can see we're calling one function, and then when next is called, it goes on and calls the next function in the chain. Now let me show you another way that you might see functions chained together. And this way is really the way you would probably see it more often. I'm just pasting in some very, very basic functions here. So I've got function 1 that has request, response, and next. It logs to the console 1 and calls next. Function 2, same construction, logs to the console 2. Function 3 doesn't have a next. It logs to the console 3. It also sends the response finished, and then it is complete.
Believe it or not, I will draw the person you will marry. One of my clients asked for a refund. She thought the man I sketched looked...
So how would we use that in a route? All three of those. So instead of the commas we saw chaining the anonymous functions, we can say app.get, and let's say this is for the route. Let's just call it chain. And we'll go ahead and make the HTML optional as well. And after that, you can provide these handlers in an array. So we'll just have 1, 2, and 3 in this array. So all of the route handlers are provided right here in this simple line, and we're calling all of the functions that are above. So let's go ahead and save and go to the route chain in the browser. I'll switch from hello up here at the top, type in chain, and you can see in the console we got 1, 2, 3, and in the browser we got finished in the small text because it just sent the text finished. And these route handlers work in a way that is very similar to what we would call middleware. And middleware is what we'll be covering in the next tutorial. But you'll get used to seeing this call to next, so it can call the middleware. Likewise, we'll make a change for our 404 as well, because right now we're just delivering a custom 404 for GET requests that come in right here with this path. But we can go ahead and improve that using middleware as well. And we'll also talk about how to serve those static deliverables like our style sheet, the CSS, any JavaScript that we want to go to the browser, and anything else like images that we have currently broken on the page when we go to new page, or some data. So we'll talk about how to provide all of those as we cover middleware in the next tutorial.